Hello everyone, this is David here from Airflo Rails. Just wanted to give you guys a quick video on how custom rails are made. Now the custom rail is generally done first by the customer asking, I want a custom rail for this particular ramp or stair set, street plaza, park, whatever it may be. The customer generally always wants some kind of custom rail for whatever they may have. In this case, I'm just going to show you how one was made for a street plaza, customized to the customer's specifications. Now, first of all, what they did was they sent me, since I don't own a street plaza, it would be impossible for me to go off of what ramps that I have, because I probably don't. I might have what you have, but sometimes I don't. It just comes down to it. And if it's a custom park, I obviously don't have that because there's one of them in the world. So first off, the customer sends me a drawing with what they want, and then they also send me, in order for this to work correctly, they send me a drawing with the dimensions on it, or they send me a picture, or I'll show you the picture in this case. You can see in the picture they wanted they had all the dimensions of the street plaza. They had the type of rail that they wanted, and the customer told me they wanted it to look kind of like Carrie Williams Park from Unite Fingerboarding. And what I ended up doing for that, so I took the dimensions. Now, if you see this, there's the box, okay? That's the actual length of the street plaza, but that is not the height of it. But in this case, the height doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is this difference right here, the gap between the bottom to the top. That's the only thing that matters, because that's the only thing that I'm working with here. So what I did, they gave me pretty much free rein they wanted the kink and they wanted the bars underneath like Carrie's was. So what I ended up doing is I took a drawing and I said, okay, now I have the right lengths, I have the right amount of run up. Now I need to figure out how long the rail is going to be. And I said, okay, 10 inches is probably going to be too short. What I ended up doing, I made it 11 inches long, and what it's going to end up being is a kink rail, and it goes pretty much to the end of the street plaza, so we'll just shoot off of it at the end. Now, what you're probably wondering is, well, how do you design the rail? Well, first thing I do when designing any rail, I first think, okay, now, is there enough run-up space? Which, in this case, I was concerned about that, because there was, if there's a kink on the end, you don't want the kink coming out halfway to the run-up, and then, what I do is, he said he wanted it 2 inches tall, and the length he wasn't sure of. So I said, okay, well, I made it 2 inches taller than the top part which is right here. You can see that? Yeah. That's 2 inches tall. And then when I said, okay, now he wants a kink. So I decided, well, I want the first kink to start at the edge of the street plaza. Now, obviously, when they get this, they can move it around wherever they want it and screw it in. But I said, okay, there's the first kink. I said I made that 1.5 inches. So if you're going to make that 1.5 inches, you want the other end 1.5 inches, so it's the same length. Now, what I did was I took this and put it 1/2 inch away from the edge, drew it at 1.5 inches, and then what I did was since this is 1/4 inch stock that I made this rail with, sorry, you probably didn't see that already, that I made this rail with, what I did was I drew it at 1/4 inch, which is actually scaled size. So what I did with that then is I drew to the 2 lines at 1.5 inches, okay, and then I drew the bar on top of that for the 1/4 inch, because that's how big the rail is. So then what I did was I connected this end of this right here, this line, and I connected that to the beginning of this line, thus forming the kink. And then I did the same thing on the bottom, and then what you do is where the 2 lines intersect at the top, you draw in the line, and that's where you know where to bend the metal to. So what I end up doing is, after the rail is drawn to scaled form, well, I guess I should say this first, I then drew in, this is 3/16 inch round bar, and I just kind of eyeballed where I wanted this and that in there. And then what I do is I say, okay, well, you take, I have a protractor, I capture this angle, right there, and then what I do is I divide that by 2, and that's you cut 2 angles like this, okay, in the piece of metal, and then all you do is you fold it and it comes to the right dimension. Now, even with being that precise and careful, there's still room for error, so what I actually do is I line it up to this drawing after I cut it, since it's the scaled size, and then what I do is I make sure it's the correct size on here, and then I take it to the welder and I weld all the sides shut. Now you're probably thinking, oh my god, I don't want sides welded on my rail. Well, what I then do is I grind it down with an angle grinder with a flap disc attachment in order to get everything smooth, and when it's done you can't even tell that it was grinded at all or it was welded. So if you see right there, you can't tell, and right there, you can't tell that it was welded, okay? Because it's grinded down, and same thing with the underside, but the underside you can't tell at all because there's the round parts there. So then what I do is then cut the correct lengths for the cape rail, and then after that's cut, what I do is I take the top bar, place it on here, and then I take the 2 legs, place them on as well, and this is the most crucial part, and then I clamp them down on my work table with onto the top bar, and everything's clamped onto the picture. Then I connect the welding ground clamp to the C-clamp, which clamps down the pieces of metal so that it's grounded so that I have current, and then from there I just weld on the 2 legs and make sure that after I line them up to make sure they're square, and then I weld the other side, and then weld all 4 beads, and then those get grinded down like I just explained. And then from there, all I did was I took this 3/16 inch round bar and welded that on in place, and then grinded that down and filed it down and made sure that it looked nice. And then from there, all that was left to do is make sure the feet are straight. And what I do is I take a drill bit and I drill out these holes, and they're also countersunk, which you probably can't tell. And what that ends up doing is then it gets screwed into the customer's either park or, in this case, street plaza. Now, what happens with that is, like I said, it gets screwed in. Like everything else, it gets painted. This one, the customer wanted red, so I painted red. And now, you're left with a beautiful finished rail. A lot of people don't know how I make custom rails or how I would go about doing it, but this is how I do it, and this is the best way I know to do it. Sure, I could use a CAD program, but honestly I'd be lost, and this way I can just weld right on the paper. If you notice, there's like all kinds of burn holes and everything. That was just because I tack weld on the pieces. And then you're also probably wondering, well, how do you know, like when you weld it, like how do you make sure these are perfectly set for the gap? Well, it's a good question. What I do is I get a piece of wood, or several pieces of wood, and I just stack them on top of each other until this gap was 3 centimeters. So what I did is I took my metric ruler and I measured it, several pieces of wood stacked on top of each other until I found the one that was 3 centimeters, a combination of woods that were 3 centimeters. So then what I do is I set the rail up. I have markings on the feet of where to weld, and I set it to the table to 3 centimeters gap, so I know exactly how tall it is. And then from there, it's perfect, and it comes out, and like I said, it gets painted up and everything. And what the customer ends up with is a finished product like this. And in my opinion, it's a very professional rail. This one ran about $30, but you have to understand that this takes a lot of time to draft drawings like this. It's not like I just draw it with this freehand. I use several rulers, different metric, different inches, whatever the demand is for, that's what I do. So while this may be about the same amount of metal as a $25 rail, you have to consider that this takes a lot of time, and you know, time is money, regardless of how you look at it. Time is money. So yeah, so that's how I make custom rails. I'm glad. I just wanted to show kind of you guys how exactly they're made, because some people may want something for their part, but they probably don't think that I could do it. But most of the time I can, unless there's some crazy bend or something that's like extraordinarily. Most of the time I can even do curved rails. If you want a curved rail for your hands, or for like a handrail for your stair set, I can do stuff like that. So if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to leave them in the comments. Other than that, thanks for watching, and if anyone after these videos is looking to get a custom rail, go ahead and send me an email. You guys know my website, airflorails.com. Just check out the contact page, contact me, and I can get you, I usually get an estimate, and my estimates I never charge more for, unless, you know, most of the time the estimate's dead on. I don't try to charge more than that, but there's very rare cases that I've ever gone over the estimate. So once again, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.